My life is a movie I've already watched. Before the barista even moves, I hear the ceramic cup shatter on the tile. Before the phone in my pocket vibrates, I feel the phantom hum against my leg. It's called echoing. I live 3 minutes ahead of the rest of the world, trapped in a loop of predictable moments. It's exhausting to never be surprised, to always know the punchline before the joke is even told. For everyone else, the world is a series of events. For me, it's just a series of replays. Then there was David. When I first looked at him 15 years ago, the echo stopped. For the first time in my life, there was no before and no after. There was just now. He was my quiet place. A beautiful, empty space in a world of constant noise. I spent 15 years in a life I couldn't predict, and I loved him for it. Every day was a mystery because he was the only thing my gift couldn't touch. I thought it was fate. I thought I had finally found the one person I was meant to discover in real time. I didn't know it was something else. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was standing in the kitchen, reaching for a mug, when the silence was suddenly ripped away. The gift didn't just return, it hit me with a vengeance. My lungs filled with the sharp, metallic sting of hospital antiseptic, while I was still standing in my own home. I saw the kitchen window glass shattering into 1,000 diamonds, even though the glass was still smooth. I stood frozen, counting the seconds, waiting for the reality to catch up to the vision. I knew something was coming, and for the first time, it was coming for him. I stood in the center of the kitchen, paralyzed. I could hear the siren wailing 2 blocks away in my mind, even though the street outside was silent. I counted down. 3, 2, 1. The phone on the counter finally screamed to life. I didn't need to answer it. I had already felt the cold air of the emergency room. I had already smelled the tragedy. The 3-minute warning was over. David was gone, and the echoes were louder than they had ever been in my life. By the time I reached the hospital, the world was a blur of things I had already seen. I sat by David's bed, holding his cold hand, and for the first time, I tried to force my gift backward. I tried to see his past. Suddenly, the room vanished. I saw a flash of David, years ago, shaking hands with a man whose face was a blurred, shifting shadow. In the vision, David leaned in and whispered directly into my ear, "Not yet, Eve. Wait for the dream." I pulled my hand away, shivering. Who was that man? And why was my husband keeping secrets in a life I thought I knew by heart? 3 months of autopilot. My gift has become a cool, relentless purse. I look at my kids and see their first heartbreak, years before the tears even fall. I look at the neighbors and see their mundane tragedies before they'd even finished their morning coffee. There is no noise canceling anymore. No escape. The only place where the world goes quiet is David's side of the bed. It's a black hole, a total, terrifying void, where my vision simply dies. I'm surrounded by everyone's future, but I can't see a single trace of his. I am drowning in premonitions, searching for the one person who isn't there. Last night, the black hole finally opened. I fell asleep in that empty silence, and for the first time since the hospital, the void pulled me in. I woke up in a gray, silent version of our living room. The furniture was ours, the photos were ours, but the color had been bled out of everything. It was like being inside a photograph from a dream. Then I saw him. David was standing by the window, looking younger, wearing his old high school jacket. I blinked, and the window was empty. Suddenly, he was sitting on the sofa across from me, his eyes fixed on mine. I tried to speak his name, but my voice was a dull echo. I blinked again, and he was gone from the sofa. He was standing by the bookshelf now, his movements, not like a man, but like a glitch in the air. 1 second, he was 10 feet away. The next, he was right beside me. "I didn't just lack a future, Eve," he said. His voice didn't come from his mouth. It vibrated from the walls themselves. "I masked it. I hid it to protect you from a choice you weren't ready to make." The air felt thick, humming, with an energy that made my skin crawl. I reached out for him, but before I could touch his sleeve, he was already behind me. When I turned, he was inches from my face. He gripped my shoulders, and the touch felt like static electricity, sharp and cold. "Check the albums, Eve," he urged, his face flickering like an old film reel. "Check the back of the class of '98. He looked desperate, his image shimmering as if the dream couldn't hold him much longer. "Find Papo," he commanded. The name felt like a heavy stone dropped into a still pond. David's grip tightened, the only solid thing in a world that was dissolving into smoke. "He's the one who taught me how to stay invisible to you." "He's the one who knows why I had to hide my scent." I sat bolt upright in bed, gasping for air, the name Papo vibrating in my skull like a bell. I didn't know what a scent was, or how my husband had spent 15 years being a ghost in his own house. But as I looked at the moonlight hitting his empty pillow, I knew the quiet place had been a lie. The hunt was on. I woke up minutes before my alarm, my heart drumming a rhythm I didn't recognize. The dream didn't fade like they usually do. It stayed, shimmering in the corners of the room. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just staring at the floor. The clarity of David's voice, the way he looked in that jacket. It was more real than the room around me. I called out of work. I couldn't pretend to be normal today. I needed to know if the class of '98 was a memory or a map. I began to move through the house, not with anger, but with a quiet, trembling determination to find the truth he left behind. I found the shoeboxes tucked away in the back of a kitchen cabinet, buried under things we never used. I spread the contents across the floor like a deck of cards. At first, they looked like random snapshots, but then I started turning them over. Some backs were blank, but others were marked with small, precise numbers. A photo of us at the beach had a 4 in the corner. Our wedding day was a 12. It was a jigsaw puzzle spanning 15 years. Then I found the graduation photo from '98. It had the number 15 circled in red, in a single, chilling sentence written beneath it. "Papa, help me mask my scent." I ran my thumb over the ink, feeling a wave of profound sadness. Scent. I knew what he meant. It was his psychic trail, the very thing my gift uses to find people. David hadn't been hiding because he was dangerous. He had been hiding because he was terrified. He had spent our entire marriage under a heavy, invisible cloak, working so hard to stay silent for me. But why? What was so heavy in his past that he needed to pay a man to help him disappear right in front of me? My gift, which sees the whole world, had been blindsided because David was protecting me from the very thing he was running from. I began arranging the photos by their numbers, trying to make the messages align. But my eyes kept drifting back to that graduation picture. I looked past the young, smiling version of David and focused on the background. There, leaning against a tree near the edge of the frame, was a man. My breath hitched. It was the same blurred shadow from my hospital vision. He was watching David with an intensity that made the hair on my arms stand up. He had been there from the start, a silent witness to the life David was trying to build, or perhaps the one he was trying to leave. I fumbled with the spine of the old photo album, feeling something stiff hidden beneath the fabric. I pulled out a small, folded scrap of paper with a handwritten address. I looked back at the graduation photo and saw what I had missed. Across the man's face in the background, someone had scrawled a name in aggressive, dark red ink. Popo. Who was this man who spent 15 years helping my husband mask his soul? What was David hiding? I grabbed my keys, the silence of the house suddenly feeling too heavy to bear. I was going to find Popo. I was going to find out what was worth 15 years of shadows. The address led me to a quiet bungalow on the edge of the city, nearly hidden behind 10 towering, ancient trees. As I walked up the path, I expected to feel afraid, but instead, a strange sense of peace washed over me. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. A woman stood there, her eyes kind and knowing. "Hello, Eve," she said softly. "We've been expecting you." I didn't ask how she knew my name. In this house, the air felt thick and heavy, vibrating with a familiar energy. It wasn't the jagged static of my echoes. It was a deep, resonant hum. The inside of the house was circular, with no sharp corners for shadows to hide in. Sunlight poured in from the ceiling, illuminating shelves filled with books and jars of dried herbs. I finally met him in the center of the room. Papa. He wasn't the dark shadow from my visions. He was an old man with hands that looked like gnarled wood. He looked at me with a profound empathy that made my eyes sting. "David loved you more than his own safety, Eve," he whispered. "He didn't hide from you because he was ashamed. He hid because he was a man caught between two worlds." Papo sat me down and explained the impossible. He possessed the same gift I did, but he had learned to do more than just listen to echoes. He had helped David fold his timeline, masking his psychic scent so that my gift could never read him. He was investigating shadows, Eve. Things he didn't want following him home to you, Papa explained. By staying invisible to your sight, he kept you outside of the splash zone. He stayed in the dark so you could live in the light. I felt the weight of 15 years of protection pressing down on me. My quiet place wasn't a lie. It was a sacrifice. Papo led me to a back room, his expression turning solemn. On a low table sat another set of photo albums, identical to the ones I had found in my attic. My heart hammered as I opened the first page. The photos were of a man who looked exactly like David, but everything else was wrong. The banners in the background, the shop signs, the newspapers on the tables, it was all in French. David had never traveled to France. He didn't speak the language, yet here he was, living a life I didn't recognize, in a place he had never mentioned. "This isn't his past, Eve," Poppin whispered. "This is the life he was hiding from." I reached out, my trembling fingers touching the glossy surface of a photo. In it, the man, the David I knew, was smiling at someone just off camera, standing under a sign that read Rue de Wapé. The moment my skin hit the page, the room began to dissolve. The circular walls of Papo's house bled into a street of cobblestones and the smell of fresh rain and lavender. The air around me began to roar with 1,000 new echoes, French words and unfamiliar voices spinning in my head. A blinding flash of white light pulled me forward, dragging my consciousness into the paper. I wasn't just looking at the photo anymore. I was falling into it,